What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Napoleon Total War online multiplayer battle. It has been a long time since I've done one of these. For those of you all who are faithful to this little humble channel, I really do appreciate your support. Thank you all so much for watching the last several videos that have been put up on the channel. Like I mentioned before, if you're new here, this started out as a COVID hobby that I was just bored in grad school and wanted to take some time to do some things that was not just sitting around at home kind of twiddling my thumbs. So I thought, you know what, why not? Why not venture out into the internet sphere and put out some fun little stuff, you know, just make it a little hobby out of it. And I came to actually really enjoy it. These last couple battles that were up on the channel were pretty enjoyable, and I really enjoyed making them. So you know, I figured I'd stick with it. And it's been a hot minute since we've made the last battle. Highly recommend you check that one out. That was the most climactic battle that has ever been put up on the channel. You know, we're going to go with another one here. So we are returning to the battlefield today as, you guessed it, the great, mighty Prussian Empire. So we have returned to the battle, and we got a pretty interesting setup here for you guys today. We got a little bit of an unholy alliance going on right now. We're going to take you guys through the battlefield real quick, but first things first, I want to kind of give you guys a feel for where the fight is going to be today. We are playing on a map called the Galician Ria. The Galician Ria is, as you can see, pretty windy, tipsy-topsy-turvy, whatever you want to call it. It's more reflective of the terrain that these types of battles historically took place on in the actual Napoleonic era. The rolling hills of the farmlands of France and Belgium and everywhere you would think that a Napoleonic battle would take place. This is the stereotypical battlefield setup. So we got some houses here that are going to kind of serve as anchor points for the flanks of the armies. We've got some little hilltops that are going to be critical vantage points on the battlefield. We have a river here running alongside the map, so players can anchor their flanks on the far side of the map. That way they're secure from cavalry charges. And of course, a battle like this would not be complete without the presence of a dominating hill. This hill is critical for control over the battlefield, and we're going to enlarge the tactical map here for you guys to get a full understanding of where we are. That's where this hill is, and you see, as you can see, rolling out the topography, kind of levels out here into the rolling flatlands that we see here below us here, where our armies are set out before us. So this is going to be a really interesting battle, a little bit confusing too, because we do have some similar factions that are going to be on the battlefield. So I apologize if I mistake some of my units for my opponents. That happened in this battle, and it was a little embarrassing, but we're gonna let you guys watch it, and you guys can enjoy the confusion for yourselves and enjoy being confused. So coming to the battlefield today, we have here on the Allies on our right flank, we have the Prussian Gecko commanding the army of Prussia, and we have another Prussian army commanded by yours truly, commanding the Prussian army. I'm repeating myself. Commanding the Prussian army, I'm returning to the battlefield with the Prussians, my favorite faction in the game. And then we have Smack My Yak, which I think is a hilarious name, commanding the army of Russia today. So Russia is formed up here on our left flank. Facing off us on the battlefield, forming up on our opponent's right flank, we have Mr. Egg commanding the armies of France today, leading the Grande Armée. We have in the center Mr. 101 commanding the armies of Prussia, facing off against me directly in the center. So this is where already I knew this battle was not going to go well for me, because I'm not very observant when it comes to microing on these battlefields. So facing off against another Prussian army was really difficult for me. So, and you're going to see how that turns out for me. And then we have Joachim Murat commanding the army of Great Britain today, formed up on our opponent's left flank. So we're going to go ahead and kick this battle off here, but actually, before we do that, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the army compositions, and we're going to start this off at slow speed, opening up on our right flank, commanding the army of Prussia with the Prussian Gecko. We have him bringing to the battlefield today 1 unit of general staff, 3 units of Prussian Fusiliers, which serves as a skirmisher unit. We have 4 units of Foot Guard, which is an elite infantry unit of the Prussian army. We have 1 unit of the 8th Life Regiment. We have 3 units of Musketeers, 1 unit of Brandenburg Uhlans, which is a cavalry unit. We have 1 unit of Life Hussars, which is a light shock cavalry unit. We have 1 unit of Cuirassiers, which is a heavy cavalry unit. There they are, riding off into the tree line there. And we have 1 unit of Lutzau's Freikorps, which is a Lancer Cav. And actually, I apologize, guys. We're going to pause it here because this battle already, as you can see, is about to kick off. The cavalry is going for this hill. Like I mentioned before, this is going to be a really a critical, highly contentious part of the battle. So we're going to pause it here real quick while we take a look at our armies. In the dust, as you can see, in this massive human blob is my army. Bringing to the battlefield today, I am bringing a regular unit of general staff, 3 unit of Silesian Schutzen, which is a skirmisher unit. We have 8 regiments of musketeers, which is your typical rank and file line infantry unit. I'm bringing 1 unit of grenadiers, which is a heavy melee regiment. A heavy... words are hard today, guys. I'm bringing with me 1 regiment of grenadiers and 2 units of foot guards. There those guys are in their tall white plumes. I am bringing with me also to the battlefield today 2 units of Lancer Cav and 1 unit of Cuirassier. There they are mixed in those gorgeous white-looking uniforms with the rest of my infantry. Going over to our left flank for Smack My Yak with the with the Russian army. I'm going to stop saying that. I'm just going to call him Yak from now on because that's a little too much for me. He's bringing to the battlefield with him 1 unit of general staff, 1 unit of the 17th Jaeger Regiment, which is a skirmisher unit of the Russian army. We have 2 units of regular Russian Jaegers. There they are right there in their green uniforms. We have 1 unit of Semensovsky's Life Guard, which is an elite infantry unit, I believe. There they are right over there. Well, they're gone. Oh, there they are. We have 1 unit of the Semenovsky's Life Guard, which, like I said before, is an elite Russian infantry unit. We have 4 regiments of musketeers, like the Prussian army, just your typical rank and file. Oh my gosh, how can I not talk today? 4 regiments of musketeers, which is your typical rank and file line infantry unit of the Russian army. 4 units of Life Guard foot, there they are in those gorgeous looking green uniforms. 2 units of the Opelesche, which, if I'm correct, is just a throwaway militia unit. So those guys don't serve much tactical advantage on the battlefield. They don't really add to an army's lethality. They're just... no offense to these guys, but they're kind of meat shields, and the Russian player knows this, which is why he's bringing them to the battlefield. They're just an additional manpower to add to your army in the event that you're still heavy on funds. We have 3 units of Cossack cavalry charging into the foray here, which is a pretty good shock cav unit. They're not the best, but they do provide some decent lethality to an army. In the event that you want to do some quick strikes against your opponent's flanks. And we have 1 unit of Pavlograd Hussars, which again is another a light cavalry unit. There they are right over there. They are a little bit better in delivering shock to an enemy, and they're a little bit long lasting on the battlefield. We're going to go ahead and take a look at who Yak is facing off again with the French on the enemy right flank. Mr. Egg is bringing with him 1 unit of general staff with him today to the battlefield. He is bringing with him also 2 units of chasseurs, which is French for hunter, by the way. He's bringing with him 2 units of chasseurs, which is a French skirmishing unit. 1 unit of the 6th Regiment d'Infanterie Légère, which is also a French skirmishing unit. We have 3 regular units of Fusiliers of the line, which is your typical line infantry unit for the French faction. We have 4 units of Swiss foot in their red uniforms, can easily be mixed up on the battlefield for British troops, but luckily for us today, France and Britain have formed an unholy alliance, and they're fighting together on the same battlefield. We have 2 units of dragoons, which is again, also a heavier cav unit. Not the heaviest. You do have the cuirassiers, which do serve a greater functionality on the battlefield when it comes to heavy cav. But these guys, the value add for them is that they are also a shooter cav as well. So they can engage an enemy at in close quarter battles and also at long ranges too, picking them off from afar. We have 1 unit of cuirassiers. They are a heavier armored cav unit that's very lethal, very dangerous on the battlefield. And then we have 1 unit of Chevalier Lancer cav, which is a really good shot cav. Facing off again in the enemy center is Mr. 101. He is bringing with him to the battlefield 1 unit of general staff, 3 units of Prussian Jaegers, which is a skirmishing unit, 9 units of musketeers, so he is going heavy on basic line infantry, 1 unit of grenadiers, which is again a heavy melee infantry unit. There they are, and then also we have 1 unit of foot guards, which is an elite infantry unit for the Prussian faction, 1 unit of Lancer Cav, and 1 unit of Hussar Cav, and they are lost somewhere in that Prussian blob. And then off on the enemy far left flank, we have Mr. Joachim Murat, bringing with him today to the battlefield 1 unit of general staff, 3 units of light foot, which is a skirmisher unit. We have 5 units of Highland Foot, and these guys are really good. There they are right there. So we have 5 regiments of Highland Foot, so already we got some pretty northern country influence to this British army. We have 2 units of regular foot infantry units. We have 2 units of foot guards, which is an elite British infantry unit. 1 unit of the 42nd Foot Black Watch. These guys, again, very lethal. You do not want to cross swords with them on the battlefield. They are very decent, very good in melee. And 1 unit of the 88th Foot, the Connaught Rangers. These guys are, oh my gosh, look at this. That's another thing that I love about this time period, man. Just these gorgeous uniforms. I mean, look at that. This is absolutely gorgeous. So I love that little plume on their hat. All right. We're going to go ahead and get started. Oh, also, he brought with him, the British player brought with him 2 units of Life Guard cavalry. And as you can see, they are charging up to the top of this hill. So we're going ahead and kick this off and see where the battle goes. This battle was recorded actually a year ago, so I apologize, guys, if I don't remember events of the battle. But we are going to do the best we can and observe what happens today on the field. In other words, I'm watching this battle for the first time. So the British player has already assumed command of this hill with his 2 units of Life Guard Cav. The Prussian Gecko is going to hesitate a little bit with his cavalry on the far right flank, but he is going to commit 1 unit of Lutzos Freikorps into the foray and charge into this advancing Life Guard cavalry unit. Try and hold off the British advance as both the British and the Prussian player move up to take command of this hill. Oh, it's gorgeous. Prussian Gecko holding off here, waiting. Didn't commit to that charge, and he did give the Life Guard cavalry unit a decent advantage charge bonus, charging down the hill into this stagnant unit of Towartsis. However, not real need to be worried about. We do have my army advancing forward here. I noticed the skirmishers were a little out in front, so I'm going to send forward my Lancers to charge forward against 101's Jaegers that are setting up here. However, I did get caught a little bit out of position. These cavalry units are going to, they might be able to run down the Jaegers, but unfortunately for me, in classic Napoleon, the sound glitch is at it again. There we go. There we go. Mr. 101 has formed up on this ridge line up top here, and he has caught my cavalry unit out in the open, and unfortunately I did take some casualties in making that quick advance. So already I am in a bad position here. Mr. 101 has a really good setup on this ridge line here, and unfortunately my units are still trying to come online. So in terms of where the army stand in terms of positioning, 101 already has a good hold on me and is forcing my troops to reform back here in the tree line and await instructions on how we might be able to push forward and press forward on the Prussian center. Moving forward up on top of the hill again, Prussia does seem to have a little bit of the upper hand here in taking on that lifeguard cavalry unit. However, that has given the British player enough time to get his entire troops, the entirety of his army, up on top of this hill. So it is going to be an uphill battle for the Prussian Gecko as he brings his troops online. However, the British player has not really cemented his far left flank, and that is going to provide the Prussian Gecko an opportunity and an opening to swing around wide around the British left and try and flank the British player over on this side. However, the British player does have a very dominant position up here on the crest of this hill, and he's going to put in some devastating fire into the Prussian cavalry unit commanded by the Prussian Gecko. Now, I am bringing my army online here to the center. We are going to try and engage the Prussian player head on, knowing that my Prussian ally is trying to fight for this hill. The last thing that we want to have happen is for the British player to defeat him and swing down and take advantage of an opening here and divide our army in two. So I really have no choice but to bring my troops online, form an angle because the British player is starting to come out of the tree line and come down off of this hilltop. We do have a cavalry charge going in here. We are going to try and take out... Oh, we actually have our cuirassier charging into the Highland foot. This is a really good move. Unfortunately, however, he's got a strong infantry presence here, so we are going to lose this cavalry unit. But we might be able to knock out some British regiments of foot while they're stuck in this tree line, because he really isn't paying attention over here. The bulk of the British player's attention is focusing up here on the hilltop. Now, the British player has noticed the Prussian Gecko moving around to his left, so he is going to angle his troops, the Connaught Rangers, and they're going to form an L, almost like a fishhook, off on this side of his flank here, try and hold off the Prussian advance. I'm not entirely sure why he's withdrawing into the tree line, because he does have good range on these guys. He can position here and take shots over at the Connaught Rangers, and they would not be able to return fire. So I'm not entirely sure why the Gecko is returning into the tree line. Unfortunately, though, that does give the British player enough time to firm up his flank a little bit and provide any protection against a flanking maneuver. Now, we do have Prussian cavalry charging in again to the center. He is going to take out a little bit of the British light infantry, so that is good. Unfortunately, though, he's got some solid positioning here with his line infantry, so that's going to be a little tough to deal with. All right, now, the battle has opened up a little bit. We are trading pot shots with the Prussian Jaegers here, commanded by 101. Really no real action here, no line engagements going on right now. It's just skirmishing for now. Let's go ahead and take a look over at Yak and see what he's doing with the French. The French and the Russians are kind of in a stare-off right now with one another. The Russian player is going to be moving out beyond this little village here. He is going to take up some really good positioning. The French really didn't do anything here. And honestly, that was kind of a good call because the rest of his allies are holding up position along his same latitude. So he really doesn't want to put his troops too far out of position because that will allow the Russian the door that he needs to swing around. And much like what I was talking about up on top of the hilltop there, allow the Russian player to swing around and isolate the French army from the rest of his allies. So a good call on the French player. He is playing defensive, which is kind of frowned on in the Napoleon community. However, in his case, it is a good thing because he does have a wide field advantage over the Russians as they are trying to maneuver and set up into position over here on our far left flank. We're still trading shots with the Prussian Jaegers here. We'll get a close-up look at the action here. We do have a greater advantage on the skirmishers of Mr. 101. He is clumped up here, and he has taken some pretty heavy casualties here. If I were the Prussian player, I'd extend my lines a little bit, try and deliver the same enfilade of fire that I'm delivering to him. However, he does have an added advantage where he is up on top of a hill, so that will be a little difficult for us. Okay, now here is where I was a little caught off guard. He is going to charge his cavalry, and like I mentioned before, the Prussian player and I were commanding the same faction. So I thought that this cav was my cav. So he did get a really good job. He did a really good job in bringing his cav out and using the element of surprise, that fog of war, because now he is going to sweep around and he is going to slide into the flank of my Silesian Schutzen, and he is going to do some pretty hefty damage to those guys. However, we will be able to drive off that cavalry unit successfully. Unfortunately, though, we will lose some skirmishers in the process, and we will take some casualties. We're even conducting some friendly fire over here between our squares. In defending off against the cavalry, we are also shooting into the backs of our own guys. So not a really good position to be in. Now, up here, the line battle has been joined. For some reason, Joachim Murat has withdrawn from this hill, which I think was a mistake. The Prussian player, Mr. Gecko, has formed a pretty solid offensive line. However, the British player did have a really good positioning up here, and the Prussian Gecko's lines are stretched really thin. He could have exploited that. He's got a lot of elite units on the battlefield. He could have taken advantage of that. Unfortunately for him, though, he decided that it was too much, and he's going to withdraw, and that is going to put his troops in a pretty bad position because now they are shooting on the downslope. So that's going to be a little difficult for the British player to reconcile that difference between him and the Prussian player, because now the Prussian Gecko has a really good position over here on our far right flank, and he is going to do some serious damage to the British player now that he's on the downslope. Look at that. These guys are shooting. This is another thing to be watchful for in Napoleon Total War. These guys are shooting at the Prussian advance. However, they're shooting into the dirt. They're not shooting at anybody. Look at that. Their bullets are flying into the dirt. So that's providing the Prussians plenty of cover to close the distance and draw a position up here on this flank. Oh, that was a gorgeous volley right there. Let's take a look at what's going on in the center here. All right, we have engaged 101's lines. However, again, like I mentioned before, the disposition that my guys are at is that we are on the downslope, much like the British player. So we are going to be at a disadvantage here, shooting at also, again, with the cavalry units. I'm so disoriented right now because I don't know which cavalry is mine. This battle got really confusing really quickly. We are going to bring up our reserve. We do have some units that are hanging back here, trying to anchor our flank. And we are going to try and stave off the Prussians from moving around and crushing us on our left flank. But it is not looking good for my guys. We were a little overextended already. I've taken 50% casualties for a lot of my regiments, and these guys are just pouring down the fire, and my guys don't have the range on the skirmishers the way that he does on me. So that's going to be a little difficult. And as you can see, the confusion here with the same flags is a little bit difficult to maneuver and to navigate. So a little confusing for me on my side. Now we are pushing back the British here in the tree line. That is going to aid the Prussian Gecko in pushing the British completely off out of this tree line and off of the hill entirely. The British player has again fallen back off of this downslope, giving the Prussian Gecko complete control over this hill, which was a really good push. However, we are crumbling here in the center. The Prussian player is doing some pretty good, delivering some pretty good blows to me as I'm trying to advance up this hill, trying to counter the balance of the British player for falling back. However, the pressure that he's putting on me here on this upslope is proven a little difficult for me to maneuver. I should have fallen back, but if I fell back, then that would have taken away all of the gains that the Prussian Gecko had in taking command of this hill. So really, I'm just fighting for his survival at this point. Now, I am extending my lines over here on the far left to try and pull out a flanking maneuver on the Prussian advance. However, he is going to see that, and he is going to bring up some fresh troops in reserve to counteract that charge, to counteract that advance, and try and slow me down over on this side. He is going to fortify his position, and again, it's not a really good spot for me. He's got the upslope advantage. He's going to shoot directly downhill into my guys down in this field here, which is not going to be pretty. Now, I am bringing some troops around here to protect my advance. However, the French player dispatched a regiment of Fusiliers to try and counter my advance and put on some flanking fire. We are going to get a little bit of a better volley off on these guys because they are an isolated regiment and they will be pushed back. However, unfortunately, that is going to distract me long enough for the Prussian player to bring in advance. And here comes another cav charge. He's going to bring a unit of well, maybe. Okay, he's going to hold them back. But look at how stretched thin my lines are versus the Prussian player who has a really solid position up on this hilltop. And all he has to do is just sit and wait. He's got 3 regiments of musketeers, fresh musketeers in reserve, whereas I have committed all of my reserves entirely. I am stretched out thin from the tree line all the way down to my far extreme left. And I'm trying to hold off the French advance again. Here we do have some French wavering here, but here is where the real action begins. The Russian player has now engaged the French, and he's got a really good melee going on here, taking control of this house. He's established an anchor point, so that allows cover for his troops to shoot into the lines of the French player, and the French can do nothing but shoot at this building, which is not doing them any favors, and he's going to pick them off one by one. Here comes the Cossack cav charge, charging into the breach, going directly for this weak unit of Swiss foot. Will they see that charge? I don't believe they will. And there we go. The Cossack cav charges into this weak unit of Swiss foot, and that is going to cause them to break. Yak is doing a really good job in continuing to push back the Russian advance. The Russian player did dispatch another unit of Hussars to take care of that French unit that was taking advantage of my left flank. However, unfortunately, that is not really going to help me much in my fight against Prussia. We did manage to rout a unit of musketeers. However, he is delivering some pretty hefty blows to my line here. My lines are very poorly extended. The Prussian Gecko inching further and further down this hill, inviting the British to face their wrath. But the British player is going to hold back. He's going to form up on this opposite ridge opposing the hill, and he's going to sit there and wait. So this is quickly becoming a no man's land. Nobody dare walk out into this low ground, because unlike here, that's exactly what's happening to me over on this side. I'm trying to bring my troops' morale up, bringing my general up to the front. He's taking some shots, unfortunately. But unfortunately, that's not going to be enough. The Prussian player just has a really good position. But again, I can't pull out. Like I said before, take a look at the tactical map over here. This is the Prussian player. This is my opposer, 101, Mr. 101. These are his lines up here. If I pull back, this is me in the blue. If I pull back, moving further to the north, then that will allow the Prussian player to ignore me, swing around, and isolate the Prussian Gecko up on top of this hill. So I can't do that. At this point, like I mentioned before, I am just serving as an anchor flank for him. Now, I do throw in a unit of Lancer Cav into the Prussian foot guard. That is going to cause some damage and some confusion to his lines. However, again, he's got fresh units of reserves right here. They're just going to put in musket fire into my guys, and that is going to cause some serious problems for my cavalry advance. And if that charge may have been well timed, it would have been a lot better if these guys weren't here. So the fight in the center is not going well for me.
Our men are running, sir.
Let's take a look what's going on over here on our left flank. The French player is, again, kind of like where I'm facing down in the center. The French player is a little bit out of position now. His lines are stretched really thin all the way to the far right. He's trying to stave off the Russian push on this side. He is doing some damage to those Cossack Cavs. They did manage to rout. Unfortunately, however, the Russian player, much like Mr. 101 that I'm facing off in the center, has a lot of reserves here. So he's able to commit those at liberty to either part of the French line and apply pressure. So he's going to do that here momentarily. He's got these guys just waiting for the opportune moment to strike when there's a break in the French line. French player doing a really good job putting down fire on the Russian advance, halting their push on the left flank. This is really the only thing that is keeping the Russians from swinging around and trying to push on the Prussian right on this side here. We are managing to get a little bit of flanking fire on these guys here. Again, it really all ties down to this flanking maneuver over on the left flank. Who can outmaneuver the other? Some intense fighting going on here in the tree line. I love the musket fire, man. I love it. So I'm going to bring up a unit of grenadiers, try and apply some pressure into this open hole that I see here along the pike. The Russian player doing a really good job protecting my flank, holding off against this cav charge that's trying to swing down wide and open up in this open area, trying to take out my guys over here on the left flank. We are going to bring this unit of grenadiers up here. However, Mr. 101 does see this opening, and he is going to bring in his own unit of reserves and try and stave off this little counter push that I'm making over on this hill. We're going to try and, this is going to be awesome. We're going to lob some grenades into this mess here. This is the beauty of the grenadiers. However, again, unfortunately, these guys are on a downslope. That's not really good. And here come the cuirassiers. This is what I wanted to show you guys. We're going to take our grenades. We're going to pick these guys up. We're going to lob them off into the Prussian lines. Oh, I love it. But just like that, in epic fashion, Prussian cuirassiers are going to come breaking through the smoke, and they are going to pummel into my lines. We do have some French cav pushing over here behind us. They did manage to get around my lines, and they are going to charge into the backs of my troops. And just like that, My left flank is exposed, and my lines are crumbling. They are falling apart. My guys are well below half strength, and the Prussian player here, Mr. 101, is still in a really good position. It is futile at this point for me to try and press this advance over here in the center. My lines are quickly going to fold. The Russian player is going to send over a unit of Cossack Cav to provide relief to my lines. However, again, in this smoke and in this confusion, I have no clue what's going on. I don't know which units are mine and which units are 101s, and it is just an absolute bloodbath over here in this hilltop. Now, I do have one unit of foot guard that is relatively healthy. Realize that this is kind of a bad position for me to be in, so I'm going to bring these guys back, try and form up a position off of Mr. Gecko's lines here while he has a very strong position up on this hill. I was a little frustrated at this point that the Gecko didn't come around and provide a little bit of relief on my right flank, try and fold up the Prussian lines because, like I mentioned before, Prussia has a really good position. When I say Prussia, I'm talking about Mr. 101, my enemy on the center. He does have a really solid position over here on the front, which really will keep me from making any sort of push up directly ahead. However, his flank is wide open. The British player, look how far back he is. This would allow the Prussian player a perfect opportunity to swing wide and crush the Prussian left. Unfortunately for me, though, that isn't going to happen. He is going to maintain his position up on this hill, and I am left to duke it out here against 101 on my own. And already our lines are beginning to waver here. I'm losing these guys. They're shattered. They're not going to come back to the battlefield. And just like that, guys, my lines have completely collapsed. And at this point, I'm just holding off with some musketeers, trying to hold off a charge. We are going to bring some guys up to the front here, try and take some shots off as the Prussians are falling back to a much stronger position over here on this side. He is going to form an L shape, try and stave off against any last-ditch Hail Marys that I might throw at him. But unfortunately, those Hail Marys are not going to add up to anything. My lines are already as thin as it is. And it might just be well for me to pull back out of this position because it is doing nothing but problems for me at this point. The British player not really delivering any answer to the Prussian Gecko up on this hill, which, again, that's what I said before. I was a little frustrated that my ally didn't come down to help me. We have a bayonet charge here, and that is going to deliver a final blow to my right side in the center position. So this is not going well for me at all. We do have some flanking fire that we're pushing down on the Prussian side. However, he has bolstered his position with another fresh unit of reserves. These guys are at full strength. They have not seen combat at all in this engagement, and they are going to hold the position here. In the event that there is a break in the line, he will be able to plug it with whatever reserves he has. So unfortunately, we're going for a bonsai charge here with these guys. Try and throw whatever break we can into the lines. However, these guys, oh, the Grenadiers are just falling like flies, man. It's not going well. Speaking of not going well, let's take a look at the French army. The French are continuing to fall back. Russia doing a really good job. Mr. Yak is making a solid push here on our far left flank, turning the Russian column. Now, turning the French column. Now it begins to draw down to really two strong players here on this battlefield. The French, much like me in the center here, are having a really hard time holding this position. So it's really a game of chicken. Who's going to break first? After shooting a round of volley, after putting off another volley, the French are going to fall back again. They are engaging in a tactical retreat. I can see the wisdom behind this maneuver. The Russian position is just too strong. He's now got them cornered on three sides here, pressing the advance. And the French player has no answer but just to fall back at this point. He is going to try and fall back, but he's got a lot of ground to cover before he can reach the Prussian right, guarded by Mr. 101. So it is going to be a race, a foot race. The entire French army is falling back. The whole contingent of French troops are falling back through these hills. The battle started over here, and the French army continued to sidestep to the rear, and they are continuing to fall back now into this open clearing, and the Russian player now has a commanding presence on the dominant ridge that is running north to south, or excuse me, east to west rather, on this map, and the French has no answer. He's got to fall back. So who's going to break first? At this point, I have withdrawn my troops out of this center engagement. It is futile for me to continue to press the advance. I have no troops to do it with. So I'm going to throw in the last little bit of sacrificial lambs that I have to try and hold off and protect my guys as they're withdrawing. We're continuing to open up our flank. The Prussian Gecko now has finally committed some troops of reserves to hold off the Prussian 101 advance, while we fall back with whatever remaining regiments I have, which I believe is just 1 unit of musketeers, and I had 1 unit of foot guard here set up in position. I don't know where they went. Oh, there they are. So these guys are going to fall back from the far left, and the Prussian 101 player has successfully conquered the center of the battlefield. The British player still not doing anything. It's all quiet over here, which may have served to his advantage. He kept the Prussian Gecko staring at him on this open field, worried that he might make another push up this hill. The Prussian Gecko, while he's got 3 good regiments of troops up here, that's all he's got compared to the rest of the British army. So in a way, he had no choice but to stay and defend this hill. 101 just providing cleanup now on the battlefield. Effectively, my army is wiped out. I have no real troops to answer for on this field anymore. So that was a little rough. The Russians now closing the jaws of death on the French contingent. The French player taking up another defensive position on this ridge because what's left is just open field and lowlands. He really can't go anywhere else after this. But a gorgeous flanking shot. I didn't even see this. Russian musketeers forming up on the French right. Oh, excuse me, the French left. Putting down some good flanking fire over here on the Guard seamen. They're going to have to sidestep and position themselves facing parallel to the Russian player, but that also opens him up to skirmishing fire. These Russian Jaegers are doing a really good job just pummeling the chasseurs and the infantry légère. These Russian Jaegers do have a much more effective range than the French skirmishers do, so that is going to continue to push the French back further and further, delivering as many casualties as he can, maximizing on his firepower, while the Russians really aren't taking any casualties. So this has been a really good day for the Russians on my left flank, not a good day for the Prussians. "101 setting himself up on the center here, not really moving. Now this is where I began to get a little, be a little bit more questioning. 101 didn't do anything, and like when I said before, 101 is the Prussian opponent that was facing me off in the center here. After pushing me back, he did not press his advantage. He's got this wide open hole. The Russians are way off in the distance. This is all him. 101 can swing wide and to the left and push up this hill and break the weak Prussian left. This is only guarded by 2 of my regiments, and the Prussian Gecko only has a few units of reserves that are hanging out in these trees just waiting for that entire Prussian contingent to sweep up onto the hillside and crush what's left of my army and the Prussian Gecko. Prussian Gecko still staring down the British player here. He has to keep these units here because if he redirects, then that will invite the British out of the trees and up this hill, and he won't have enough time to react. But what's more concerning is that the Prussian player here did not take advantage and capitalize off of this opening here. And this might be critical in the battle ahead. Let's take a look back at what's going on with the French player. Now we have a charge. I don't know what's going on with it. Oh, melee in the trees. Oh, look at that. That flanking contingent by the Russians have finally caught up with the Guard seamen. They are like a sublet unit of the old Guard, and these guys are going to break. They're going to run for their lives out of the tree line, and just like that, guys, the French army is on the run again. The Russian player has broken another flank in the French lines, and these guys are getting crushed. Oh, these poor souls. Well done by the Russian player. Well done. Beautiful, man. Absolutely beautiful. So now, guys, it really all ties down to what can the Russian player do. If he manages to push the French player all the way back, at which point he's practically decimated the French army in piecemeal, which is the most astounding thing. This battle started way off in the distance, way out here. The engagement now is over here. It has moved, and the entire pendulum of this battle has now shifted once again back into our favor. My army is now completely decimated, but so is the French. So it's really a 2v2 fight now at this point. With the British player still holding out, he's finally noticed the danger here. He is going to bring his troops out of the tree line. He is going to give up this position on this ridge here, essentially giving the hill to the Prussians. I mean, it was theirs to begin with from the beginning of this fight. However, without the French, he's got no security on the far right flank. So now here we go. The Russians have now caught up to the far left line of Mr. 101's army, and 101 has done nothing. He's still sitting here, man. I don't know if he was resting on his laurels, if he timed out, if he just wasn't in the battle anymore. If he timed out, then the AI would have taken control, and you would have been seeing movement on this side. So I knew that he was in command. He just wasn't doing anything. He was staring at an empty field. It's quite possible that he was waiting for hidden units that I may have had in this tree line here. Perhaps he was worried about a secondary attack. However, my army's gone, and he had to have known that, because he saw me running for their lives with my general staff running up to the top of this hill. I had nothing. I had nothing to deliver an answer for on this hill. And now with the French player falling back again, the Russians are putting in some nasty volleys into the guard seamen here. They are dropping like flies. And the Prussian flank is just, they're sitting there. They're exposed. Look at that. They're just getting shot in the sides here by the Russian player. They're flanked. They are outflanked at this point. And the Prussian player did nothing. He did absolutely nothing to deliver an answer for that. A critical error on part of the Prussian player, who had scored a great victory over my army here in the center here, is now squandering that opportunity by just sitting there doing absolutely nothing, giving a golden opportunity to the Russian player as he's swinging in, delivering the final blow to the enemy alliance. And the French are going to fall back again, man. The British player is scrambling now. He's going to set up a defensive position on this side of the hill here, but he's now formed a T with his lines. You take a look at the red player. That's our enemies. They are formed practically a T, sandwiched now on both sides. What a mess. A golden opportunity thrown away by 101. His indecisiveness in pushing up this hill has now let his entire right flank. If anything, if he didn't want to push the hill, if he thought that was too risky, he could have at least contributed some regiments over onto the far right to deliver support for the French. But the Russian player, it's almost too easy for them at this point. They're just murdering these guys over here on the far right flank. So well done by the British player. My hat goes off to him. He's trying, but, you know, at some point you have to realize that this battle it's a losing fight. He let it go. He let his guard down. Especially 101. I can't get over that. Here comes the rest of the Russian army. They're going to form up a line outside of this tree line here, and they are going to throw down another nasty volley on the British player, who is again caught off guard. He's going to apply pressure to their flank, with the Russian Jaegers delivering covering fire while the main contingent of the army gets in position. And now it's a push uphill. These Russian Jaegers are going to go in for a bayonet charge. They are going to be routed a little bit. I think they're out of ammunition now at this point. But who's going to win it? Who's going to take the advantage of the field on this day? Oh, that was beautiful. Look at that volley. The Prussian player still doing nothing. He's got all of these regiments that are just sitting here. He could swing wide and push on the Russian right. He's not doing it, though. Prussian Gecko slowly moving his troops down the slope. I believe, again, worried about that one unit of Lightfoot that's hanging out in the trees. Perhaps he thinks that there's more hidden units in the tree line. But And the balance of power is still relatively even, so there is a chance that they could pull this. Excuse me, they could pull this one out. However, chances are looking pretty grim. Yak recognizing that he is a little bit out of position. This is good. He's going to pull back. He's going to reform his lines. And he's going to make another push. But he's got the British player overextended. They are stretching their lines thin. He's got 2 units at half strength that are holding out in reserve on the back of this hillside. Meanwhile, 101 still sitting there, just high on victory off of that defeat in the center, just staring at their accomplishment without even worrying about what's going on their left flank. That's astounding to me. I had to think the player timed out here because, I mean, he's doing absolutely nothing with his troops. We do have a little bit of a house fight going on here. Britain trying to assume control of this house. However, it's a losing battle for him. But by taking command of this house, we are going to be able to put down some flanking fire over here on 101's left flank. And that is going to sweep up the Prussian. There we go. We just took the house. Now the Prussian player, Gecko, he is going to put down some covering fire down on the Prussian right. Excuse me, the Prussian left. And he's going to decimate the Prussian line on the far left. Russia taking his time. He's reforming his troops. They've been look at how much ground they covered from all the way out here. Sweeping wide, pushing the French back piece by piece up onto this ridgetop, pushing them back again. And now all he's got is 2 regiments. That's it. And the British player is now having to overcompensate from the French's defeat on this side of the battlefield. Meanwhile, the Prussian Gecko slowly pushing his way down. We do have a little bit of a cav engagement going on over here. I don't know where they came from. That's probably what he was worried about. He was worried about French cav hiding over here in the tree line, but they are going to be pushed back. That charge is futile. Even though they do have a good charge bonus over here on these lights, there's just too many of them for that cav to do any effective damage. Here we go once again. We're going to bring these guys out of the house and we're going to put down... Actually, are these my guys? No, they're not. So the Prussian Gecko is going to put down some flanking fire over here on 101's lines. Again, just sitting here, not doing a thing. Makes me sad. The British Lights kind of running around, playing a little bit of guerrilla warfare with our guys over here on the far right flank. Our right flank. However, they are going to fall back into the protection of the tree line here, leaving 101 open for just complete decimation. Prussian Gecko going to charge into the flank, and he is going to begin the process of rolling up 101's lines on his far left flank. We're going to speed this up just a little bit, figure out what's going on here. And just like that, Prussian Gecko just throwing troops into the lines. His 101's lines are beginning to waver, and he's just going to continue to sweep up the Prussian lines. Now, the British player is going to notice this break. He is going to bring some troops down to provide covering support. However, here comes Prussian Gecko moving out of the tree line here, delivering the final blow to this extremely weakened British left flank. It's not going to be enough for the British player. The French recommitting his unit of guard seamen, forming off another L off of 101's lines while they're staring off against nothing here. And 101's lines have been cleaned up, allowing Gecko the opportunity that I really would have liked to have had earlier in the game, but it's okay. We're doing pretty good against these guys here. The center has been cleaned up, and now the British are completely isolated. They're on their own with the 2 remaining regiments of French players.
Our men are running, sir.
Russia beginning to throw his troops back in, recommitting himself to that assault. He's going to swing extremely wide with his troops, and he's going to push up from the rear. He's going to extend, he's going to kite rather, the French player as far as he can to draw the British and the French lines extremely thin and deliver that kill blow that will basically wrap up this game. The balance of power says that this fight is even. However, I think we can pretty much gauge understanding of where this battle will lie. Beautiful. Oh, you hate to see it. Excellent flanking maneuver on part of Yak, drawing out the French's lines out to this far, isolating the last remaining French unit. And 1 unit of the Black Watch way out here. These guys are actually really good. I would have kept them closer to the center. In that final melee fight, you really want a good unit there in the event that you might be able to pull one off. But it doesn't look like that's the case here at this point. Russian Gecko now bringing his line infantry online, delivering the final blow to the light infantry. That's going to be it for the lights. They cannot stand toe-to-toe against line infantry. They can do all right against skirmishers, but once when they go up against line infantry, when they get within range, they're not as organized as the unit of line infantry are. And there they go. The first unit of British lights are going to be shattered. They're not going to return to the battlefield. And already the British flank is open in the air now. It's still a good fight. Hats off to the British player for putting up a final struggle. He is going to do a decent damage. He is beginning to make waver against one of the unit of life regiments here against for the Prussian army. However, he just doesn't have enough troops here to hold off against this Prussian blob that's slowly incrementing their way up on this pike and drive the final blow into the British lines. Russia doing a really good job again, pushing back the French. The French continue to fall back again, while the Black Watch here set up a final position over here on this butte, try and push off the Russian advance. However, the Russian player, I gotta give my credit to him. The Russian player knew from the beginning where all the weak spots were. He knows that this unit isolated on its own, there's no point in targeting that. So he's going to pull these troops back and he's going to recommit them to this fight over here on the far right, which is a little bit more intense. He's got 1 unit of Russian musketeers going up against 2 units of foot guards in the 88th Regiment. So that is a little bit more of a troublesome spot on the battlefield. However, the Prussian Gecko doing a really good job applying pressure over on this side here. So again, it depends. Now here we go. We got a French cavalry unit here playing a little game of cat and mouse with the Prussian lines in the rear. However, he noticed the stakes that were deployed by his own ally, and he ran his horses into them. So they were killed off by his own guys. Counts as friendly fire. So the French player is going to pull his cavalry unit out of there. He's going to try and find another opening here. And the British player is going to go in for a final charge, a last huzzah. Let's see, will they break? Oh, they do meet for bayonets.
Soon to be yours.
101 finally moving his general. I have no idea where he went. 101's indecisiveness led to the defeat at this battle. British general completely decimated. And just like that, guys, the British have been routed from the field. The French are gone, I think. Well, actually, no. He's got one unit of Polish Legion that are hanging up here. But that's it. That is going to be it for the majority of this battle. We're going to skip ahead to the end here. Very good game on all sides, I got to admit. As much as I knock 101 for not choosing to press that advantage that he had earlier in the game, he did put up a really good fight. I mean, he wiped out an entire army on his own. So hats off to you, 101. And good game to everybody involved. This was a really good fight. All right, so well done again to everybody involved, the Prussian Gecko, Yak, Mr. Egg, Mr. 101, Joachim Murat. It was a really good fight. I think there were definitely errors on all sides, but at the end of the battle, it all comes down to those little micromanagements that bring about the victory that you're seeking when you come to these types of matches. So really good game to everybody. I really enjoyed playing with everyone here. This battle, like I said, thanks again for your patience, guys, because this battle was a year old. I don't really remember all the events that played out in this fight. So really good game to all of our opponents, and hope you guys come back for another one. Take care.